Welcome to the Patron Leader Institute and our training program. I'm Gil Fried, the crowd management doctor, and I look forward to leading you on this journey in Module 13, Concerns Within the Facility. This module examines concerns within a facility that might arise due to the activity going on in the facility. For example, individuals might purchase alcohol and become intoxicated. That will never happen, right? Of course it's going to happen, unfortunately. Things like that happen, and that's one of the things we have to be aware of. Another major concern is, let's say, a medical emergency. Yet another example might be a fight in the stands. It's almost limitless what can go on during a game. There are countless concerns that could impact an event, facility, individuals, whatever it might be. Let's give you a list, just to get the ball rolling for you to think about what might be some of the options when we look at what are the events that could occur during a game. Someone spilling a drink, and that could happen on the floor or another fan, and what might result from that. The spills are not quickly cleaned up. Trash is left on the ground. Ice and snow accumulate. Bathrooms aren't clean. Maybe they're not well stocked. Someone cheering too loud or yelling profanities, and that upsets others. Patrons trying to catch an item thrown into the stands or some other souvenir. An act or employee encourages people to engage in inappropriate behavior. Maybe aisles become full, and this limits the ability of patrons to move. Maybe there's a terrorist attack. Maybe lights aren't working. As you can tell from this list, it can be almost endless what might happen. So we're going to try to cover some of those topics and what your response is going to be when something like that occurs. Now, some of the key terms that will be covered include absorption rate factor. Now, that sounds like a really complex thing, but it just looks at the various factors that influence how the body absorbs alcohol, such as your gender, the rate of consumption, how quickly you drink, what is being drunk, things like that. The next term is BAC, which stands for blood alcohol content. The best way to test BAC is a blood test, and a reading of over 0.08 would mean that the patron is legally intoxicated and violating the law if they were to drive. Next term is body or crowd surfing. That entails patrons being passed overhead from one to another. A crowd surge. A surge occurs when patrons move suddenly in a given direction, front, back, side, wherever it might be. And the last term we're going to be looking at is moshing. Moshing often entails dancing in circles and having contact with other patrons. It can involve pogoing, which is jumping up and down, and other things like that, but it's considered a more active dancing technique. So let's start with patrons' actions, because that's important to understand that you could prepare for everything, but if you don't know what the patrons are going to do, that's going to be tough. So our goal is to identify 5 ways to identify a possible intoxicated patron and 5 patron-related actions that could cause concern. So that's what we're looking at, intoxication and concerns. So potential patron-related actions that might arise in an event or facility or whatever it might be can include intoxicated fans, rowdy fans, fans spilling food or drinks on another, disorderly fans, lost children, stolen property, people climbing on fences, walls, screens. There's been a case where people have climbed onto rafters and have fallen down. Crowds entering restricted areas, minor criminal mischief like vandalism, theft, assault, jumping from one level to another level. That happens on a regular basis where people try to ride the railing of an escalator, as an example. People damaging property, arguments between people, rude and disrespectful behavior, violating event facility policies, especially if there's a code of conduct, violating various laws, maybe medical conditions. Similar to there's an almost endless amount of things that could go wrong at a facility, there's almost an endless list of stuff that can go wrong with the people in the facility. Crowds at various concerts might ignore posted rules, and you need to know how to respond to those rule violations. This is just one of those examples. For example, if a facility prohibits crowd surfing, anyone caught engaging in such activities would possibly have their wristband, ticket, or other required proof of entry confiscated or marked to indicate they have been warned. And the next violation could result in being removed from the venue. Every event, facility, and environment will have different rules and ways to enforce those rules. That's what you have to be cautious of. So if there is a rule that someone comes over the railing after they've been crowd surfing and you mark their hand, well, that's how you have to follow that rule. Let's go to intoxicated person. An intoxicated person might exhibit the following signs: impaired judgment, slurred speech, lack of eye contact, fumbling with keys or something like that, fumbling with their wallet, yelling for no reason, "Hey, Steve!" Things like that. Those are just signs. Doesn't mean they're drunk. We got to be careful. It's just signs of impairment. Some of the techniques used to minimize the impact of alcohol on patrons include the following. Now, I should say some of these are going to be outside your appointed duties and stuff like that, but it's important to understand why you might have those rules or regulations. So developing alcohol-related regulations, such as carding policy to make sure they're the right age to purchase alcohol, or maybe the maximum number of drinks allowed per transaction. Oftentimes it's 2. Things like that, that you cut off alcohol sales at the 7th inning. Those are all rules that are in place for a given reason. And they're there for specific events, especially those that represent the greatest likelihood of problems. Possible canceling or stopping alcohol sales when a crowd is anticipated to become disorderly. You might cut it off early. Knowing as much about alcohol sales as possible, such as the types of drinks sold, the sizes that are available, when sales can occur, things like that, those become an important part of you knowing what's going on. Providing dry areas, which have been suggested for at least 20% of the seating area at each price level. And that's, we don't serve alcohol in this area. Doesn't mean they can't go to the concession stands or the concourse ways, but it's just to try to minimize that. Maybe serving food with alcohol and refraining from serving as much salty food such as chips, which encourage people to drink more. Maybe serving food with high protein content like meat and cheese, which reduces alcohol's effect on the system. Maybe providing intoxicated patrons with free coffee or an area to rest as, quote unquote, a chill lounge, because it takes approximately 1 hour for every drink. So if you have 1 12-ounce beer, 7 ounces of wine, or 1 shot of hard alcohol, it's going to take you that long to have it go through your system. And that's not to sober up, but just to make sure it doesn't impact you. Making sure that someone, when they collapse from intoxication, that their breathing is monitored and they are positioned in such a way on their side to avoid choking if they in fact vomit. Maybe providing a place for intoxicated patrons to sit and possibly have something else to eat or drink out of the way so they don't cause problems to themselves or others. Maybe ensuring compliance with all age limit or laws to prevent underage alcohol sales. Maybe limiting each person to a maximum of 1 or 2 alcoholic beverages served at any given purchase time. Another version is to allow only 2 beverages in any person's possession at any given time. So you can't be walking around with your hand in like 4 cups of beer. It's only 2 in your possession. Maybe starting alcohol sales only 1 hour before the event starts and ending at a specific time before the event ends and gives people less time to buy alcohol and some time to possibly sober up before leaving the facility and possibly driving. Maybe providing various alternatives such as low alcohol beer, maybe non-alcoholic products. Those are potential alternatives. Maybe developing and promoting a designated driver and other fan education programs with input from staff, patrons, and local authorities. Maybe requiring all servers and managers to undertake TEAM, that stands for Techniques for Effective Alcohol Management. There's also TIPS, SMARTS, SIP, all these different programs out there, and to take these training programs which have been successful in reducing alcohol-related problems and increasing income for the venue. Maybe requiring each facility to have an adequate security staff. Maybe posting information signs regarding what are the policies and procedures associated with alcohol sales. Maybe providing alternative beverage options for those who do not want to drink. Let's say like a designated driver, free sodas. Maybe developing safe transportation strategies such as taxis, Lyft, Uber, and other public transportation options. But the list keeps going on. Maybe utilizing significant signage to highlight the event or facility's alcohol-related policies. Maybe communicating concerns to others, such as if you see an obviously intoxicated individual leaving a facility, you could possibly contact someone in the parking lot to monitor the person and see if they're getting behind the wheel. So these are all different rules and regulations that are out there, and it's important to know why you have them. It's to make it safer for yourself and other patrons. Now, some patrons have a high tolerance for alcohol. This means that they can drink more than others, and the alcohol will not impact them as much or in the same manner as others. So we all have friends that they can keep drinking, it doesn't seem to impact them. Everyone responds differently to alcohol. So care should be exercised to make sure that a patron is not suffering from a medical-related issue rather than accusing the patron of being, you're drunk, you're intoxicated. Maybe it's something else. How someone is impacted by alcohol is determined based on several key issues that are called absorption rate factors. And they include some of the things that's highlighted below, or I should say on the side here. Gender. Women get intoxicated quicker than men due to being smaller and having less room for the alcohol to go in their systems. Age. Older people cannot process alcohol as well, which means the alcohol stays in their system for a longer period of time. Size. The size of the drinker impacts absorption since smaller people have less room for the alcohol to go. Size also deals with the size of the drink. Food. If a drinker eats food, then the absorption of alcohol is slowed. If the drinker has an empty stomach, then the alcohol will quickly be absorbed into the bloodstream. Rate. Someone who drinks quickly will speed up the absorption rate. So if you baby the drink and have a little drink here, a little sip there, things like that, it's going to impact you differently than if you just chug the whole thing down. Strength of drink. Someone drinking a low alcohol content drink will not absorb the alcohol as quickly as someone drinking straight shots. So remember, what do we call a straight shot? Well, it's the equivalent of 12 ounces of beer, 7 ounces of wine, and 1 ounce shot of 100 proof liquor. That's what we take a look at as the baseline. So what is the one way to sober up? If you're trying to figure out if there's a magical thing that you could take after you've drank maybe a little bit too much, the only thing that will help you is time. The more time you can buy yourself or others, the better. So let's go on to the next part of this module, the event itself. So we've talked a lot about some of the things that patrons can do, some of the things that can impact patrons, such as alcohol. Our goal now is to identify several clues that an event is changing, maybe the crowd behavior. So let's go with what I call the BAST approach, B-A-S-T-E. So let's start with B, bad officiating. When officials make bad calls, it can upset patrons. The same concern can occur when a manager at a store enforces a bad rule that upsets a patron. No returns allowed! Things like that. That could be a call similar to an official's call. A stands for another game. If another game ends that has implications on standing, patrons can change their attitude or behavior. S stands for scoreboard. The scoreboard's public address system or other patrons can encourage patrons to misbehave. This concern can also apply to public address system. If someone hears something that they get upset with, that can impact them. T stands for time. The time of day for an event will impact people. It's going to impact whether or not there's any overtime as well, or if people are rushing to get home. E stands for entertainment. If there is an ancillary entertainment, it can change how fans might behave. For example, music, cheerleaders, autograph signings, free giveaway, all those different things are all approaches that can help make patrons feel better and change their behavior attitude. Because if you know you're going to be staying there longer, you might change what you're eating, how you're behaving, things like that. All right, so that's the BAST approach. Let's go now to the third part of this module, which is the facility itself. So the goal here is identify several issues that can change a facility during an event. Some of the specific facility issues you should consider include, like bathrooms, and that includes whether there are spills, leaks, broken fixtures. Maybe the stalls are out of toilet paper. That can really upset patrons. If people are waiting a long time to get into the lines because there aren't enough bathroom stalls, that can impact people. The aisles. What if they're blocked by items, or something is going on where the facility is compromised, or people are blocking it? Trash. Cans can block exit, or they have construction debris, whatever it might be. Seating areas, broken seat, broken cup holders. Stairs or escalators that are full of fans can, break down, or they can be blocked. Broken items that have sharp edges. Spilled drinks and water not being cleaned up in a timely manner. Maybe slippery conditions. Maybe poor refrigeration of food and people can get sick. Those are all examples of things that can go on within a facility itself. I've handled numerous cases where there have been issues within a facility during an event. And sometimes there's stuff that we see in the news that can impact us. For example, in San Diego back in 2021, if I'm not mistaken, it could have been 2022, a mom and son were jumping on a tabletop at a picnic table in San Diego at the baseball stadium, and they fell over and unfortunately died. The picnic table was so close to a railing that they fell over the railing and they plunged, unfortunately, to their death. Very sad story. But that is not something that has only occurred once. There have been issues where people have fallen over railings. This happened at a Texas Ranger game where a father in front of his son leaned over and was trying to catch a ball thrown up from a pitcher down below, and he fell over the railing and unfortunately passed away. Now, these might be freak accidents in some people's minds. Yeah, they could be. But the other thing is, could they have been prevented? If you're working as an usher, as an example, and you see someone on a regular basis leaning over, warn them. Tell them, look at, the center of gravity might be something of a concern because you're a tall person, and if you lean over too much, that might be dangerous. So, maybe you should, either sit down more, don't stand up, don't try leaning over, things like that. That's spotting an issue that might occur. Another one is, let's say, post orders. So, as an example, I've handled cases where there have been collapse of escalators at sporting events, at the different venues like stadiums and arenas. And one of the things that I have seen are post orders. And the post orders might say, hey, look, we're going to position someone at the top or the bottom of the escalator to monitor the number of people on an escalator. Now, at the start or end of games, there's often a push by people to go and to get in or get out as quick as possible. That might overcrowd an escalator. Now, escalators are only rated for a certain number of people per minute on those escalators, or per square, or step, whatever you want to call it, on the escalator. And if too many people are on there, you might have to be, as a representative of the venue, going to people and saying, hey, look, we need a break. We need to stop for a couple seconds, let people come down so there's not as much weight on the escalator, and then we'll continue. That's something that you could see if there is a situation that represents a concern. You are in the best position to contact your supervisor and say, look, I have a concern here. No supervisor, and I repeat this, no supervisor is ever going to get upset with you for raising a safety concern. That is what your job is there for. And so during an event, if you see a concern with a patron or with a venue, act upon it. And so I can't stress enough in the conclusion of this module, if you see something, say something. It is so important. You are the eyes and the ears of the venue. You are the one that's out there. You're the front line. Yes, there might be cameras and all that kind of stuff that might help with the monitoring in the command center, but you're the front line. You can identify things. People can raise issues to you, and then you can monitor what's going on. If you have two fans that are yelling at each other during a game, are you going to walk away and just say, it's not my issue? Are you going to intervene and tell them, hey, look, this is not the policy that we have at this venue. You can't be cussing at each other. You know what? I'm going to have to write up an incident card. I'm going to have to communicate this to others, and I have to see who you are, where you're seated, and I'm going to be monitoring you during the game. And in fact, that's what you have to do. It's not just the talk of breaking them up. and saying, hey, look at, you shouldn't be doing this. It's to be vigilant and monitor them. If you look at their area a couple more times during the game and everyone's acting appropriately, that's wonderful. You nipped it in the bud. But what if? What if? What if? And I stress that enough. That was 3 what ifs there, guys. What if they aren't changing their behavior? What if it escalates? And now it could have been saying that you could have prevented a fight maybe, and now there is a fight. And now someone maybe is dead. Maybe someone is seriously injured. And it was something that you could have prevented by being vigilant. That's why your job is so important. That's why being a patron leader is so important. It's not that you're there to watch a free concert or free sporting event or stuff like this and actually get paid for it. It's that you are the frontline staff being able to help protect others. So during an event, you have your assignment, you have your location, you have your job duties and responsibilities. Make sure you follow them to the best of your abilities. That's it. Stay safe out there, everyone. I hope you learned a lot in this module. Take care. Bye.